Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Just Chatting stream. The live stream series where we enjoy a nice Sunday afternoon and chat about whatever comes to mind. If you want to watch these streams on your own time, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and boop that bell button to stay notified. So, once again, we find ourselves in Limgrave, this time with a beautiful little backdrop of the Dradden Island and the ocean off in the distance. I honestly never noticed that the sun actually reflects off the water in Elden Ring, as you can see in the over there on the right. It creates a pretty cinematic effect, even though you're rarely ever looking in this direction now that I think about it, because most of the time when you're playing Elden Ring, you're kind of going towards the dungeons or specific castles or things like that. That's all like inward towards the land, not towards the ocean. I do wonder, like in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, if they'll ever like make an area that's like in shipwrecked areas out in the ocean, like we see over there by the sun in the top right there. There's those clearly destroyed ships. Would that ever be an explorable area? I think that'd be pretty cool. It would kind of be like No Man's War from Dark Souls 2. But we'll have to. I guess we'll have to wait and see what Shadow of the Erdtree ends up bringing in the future. And speaking of Souls-like games, though, we've recently been proceeding through the Sekiro challenge run. The challenge run essentially involves never upgrading the sword, never using any skill points, never using the prosthesis, and things of that effect. And it basically means that we're effectively carrying a butter knife, for lack of a better term, and we have the minimum amount of health, at least for without like using any status effects or things like that. So it's the bosses. It's made the bosses quite challenging. We just defeated the. Yeah, just the other day we defeated the Guardian Mate boss fight and in Sekiro. And that fight took forever. Like especially the second phase. Like I actually looked it up. The successful attempt in that second phase took 26 minutes. And verifying that's not only the first phase, which definitely took a couple of minutes. So we're getting into almost like crosscode boss battle length. For those who don't know what that's referring to, crosscode was the very first challenge run we did, and in that video game, our goal was to try and beat the action RPG at level 1. Well, the thing is, in crosscode, you're expected to be around like level 60 or 70 by the end of the game. So we had there was a massive discrepancy in our base stats versus what the game was expecting, so fights could easily take close to an hour. Like, especially that the final boss in crosscode took around an hour to defeat, and that was on a successful attempt. And even like many of the other bosses were typically taking anywhere from like 25 to 40 minutes, so which could definitely feel pretty ridiculous at times. So the fact that a Souls-like boss kind of led to that was also interesting. Let's see here. Hello, Copper Nicholson. Thanks for dropping by. How's it going? Welcome, welcome. So, as you can see, we have a lovely view of the Limgrave ocean off into the background. As we continue to talk about whatever comes to mind. So I know that, like I was mentioning with Sekiro, it's been a real challenge because we deal so little damage and so many attacks can destroy us in one hit. I mean, even the other the other day, I think it was the Guardian 8 boss fight. I actually did look up how long that second phase took us. The actual successful attempt against the Guardian 8 second phase took about 26 minutes. So I was like, was it really as long as I remember? No, it was really, really, really long. But once we got past that, it was fun to be able to get the last upgrade to our healing flask, so it will heal more health per use. And well, I'm looking forward to on Tuesday to continuing to learn the boss fights and hopefully make some good progress towards I think it's called the Shura ending, from what I've been told. But yeah, very much looking forward to that. Beyond that, oh, I see nighttime is arriving. Man, honestly, chat, this is making you realize just how beautiful of a game Elden Ring is. Just beautiful in the sense of aesthetics. So if you ever have a chance and you're just bored, I would highly recommend just going into Elden Ring, just looking off in the distance and just waiting and just seeing, like, look at like how cinematic this is, like the weather are changing, how the fog slowly rolls in. It's very, very nice and atmospheric. But yeah, in terms of other news, so for Heartwell, I've been making great progress on the tile sets as well as the rework for the stream resizing. But something that I realized as I was working on Heartwell's, thinking about the fact that the amount of XP people will be able to earn from defeating enemies in Heartwell is going to be increased substantially to make it to more encourage people to level up their equipment and their stats. They realized that the way the tutorial bosses were designed were more so for the old slower XP earning system, slower level ups, things like that. So with level ups becoming a bit more frequent, at least in the early game, that made me realize that I might have to increase the health of the bosses. But simply increasing the health isn't a catch-all solution to increase difficulty. That just makes the fights longer. So, as a result of that, something I am actively considering doing at this point is, did I know that Darth Jar Jar is now canon to Star Wars? You're saying it wasn't canon to begin with? I thought it was always canon. Okay, but in all seriousness, something I'm considering is actually giving like a phase 2 to both of the tutorial bosses. So I'm not going to say what exactly I intend to do with them, but just know that is something I will try to implement at some point as a part of this process of making the foundation of Heartwell as strong as it can be. So yes, you'll be able to level up more easily, but also expect both bosses to be a little bit harder. Alright, now let's see here. So with the FOD rolling in, it definitely makes me excited to see what Shadow of the Erdtree has to offer. I almost wonder will Shadow of the Erdtree's biome always be in like a sunset kind of environment, coupled with the maybe just constantly being nighttime, because that would definitely make for a different and interesting feel. I remember in Dark Souls 2 especially, I know I'm talking about Dark Souls 2 a lot right now, but Dark Souls 2 had probably the most variety in environments in any of like the Dark Souls trilogy plus Elden Ring. And that is saying something, because Elden Ring is a very pretty game. But even so, I think one of the things about Dark Souls 2 that really makes it stand out is the fact that it has such varied and different environments. Now, are all those environments necessarily good? No, but still, the fact is, like, Majula has kind of an air of mystery to it that none of the other Souls games have really been able to replicate. Ooh, now the fog's going away, it's getting a bit darker. Nighttime approaches. But the golden armor that's my character here is wearing is definitely contrasts well with that. Let's see here. The state you live in is having an aurora borealis. It's a massive storm, I see. I was not... I think I remember reading something about there being some kind of solar storm that would be happening today. So, I don't see it where I'm at, but it must be... I'm sure it must be like disrupting GPSs and satellites and things to that effect. Man, it's easy to forget when you live on planet Earth that outside of planet Earth is like unusually hospitable compared to, you know, the empty void that is space. Let's see here. I see you're bringing up the Inquisitor stance from last stream, Copper Nicholson, but we've been over that, so I don't think there's much more to say about that. I think the mechanics would be very similar to the dual saber stance, except we're based on dealing high DPS but having low defense, whereas the dual saber stance is more about having high defense but a generally lower DPS. So, on that note, something else that I got excited for just thinking about the future is the next time we have to play a Trails game. I know, I talk about Trails all the time, but I've only played 3 Trails games. I know there's a bunch more. I'm definitely looking forward to doing some. And definitely looking forward to doing some more challenge runs of the Trails games. Let's see here. And you say for extra agility. I mean, some of the stances do have varied agility. I think, like, for example, if you use like the heavy stance, so basically the Kylo Ren stance, you move quite a bit slower because it's supposed to make you feel that kind of oomph behind it, behind every swing. Whereas, like, I think, let's see, what saber? I don't know whether it's the twin sabers or the dual sabers, but one of those stances I think just generally feels faster to play. So, those stances give you helicopter flights. Well, to be fair, helicopter flight would be very overpowered because it would break the level design of the game. So I think it's balanced just fine the way it is for the most part. Speaking of which, I think the blaster stance was a really fun addition in Jedi Survivor. It's breaking the Jedi conventions and allowing someone to use a blaster alongside a lightsaber is not something we've seen since the days of Jedi Outcast. But in Jedi Outcast, you'd switch between the weapons. You wouldn't actually use them at the same time. But Cal can actually like fire the blaster in addition to blocking, or like combo them together. It's really cool. At least the way they've animated it. I'm very much looking forward to what I don't know what they'll call it, but the third Jedi game by Respawn Entertainment. I'm wondering what direction they'll take, because if Jedi Fallen Order was about Cal Kestis as a Jedi Padawan, and Jedi Survivor is about Cal Kestis as a Jedi Knight, I'm very curious to see what Cal Kestis as a Jedi Master is going to be like. I think he's going to be very different from the other Jedi, and I hope that he is able to. I hope that they make Cal Kestis like actually able to like train up various Jedi in his order and have them do specific things for him. Because one of the nice things that made I guess Jedi Survivor so enduring, at least with Pylon and Saloon and such, is the fact that as you meet new people, they would come back to the saloon and you'd be able to talk to them, do different side quests and stuff. It'd be cool if we did something similar for the for like any Jedi Padawan he's trained, but maybe like actually have them be able to like come in to assist you during boss fights, kind of like how summons work in the Souls games. That'd be pretty good. You think Bode's daughter is going to be... Cal's going to be Professor Sarah, and Bode's going to be Helic Millium? I disagree, at least with the first one. Cal does not have the temperance of Professor Sarah. As for Bode's daughter being like Millium, we'll see. I don't think Bode's daughter has any significant mental damage that would make her act like Millium, but I more so see Cal's daughter probably becoming more and more like... she's probably going to become more and more like... Why did I forget the character's name? Merrin, that's right. I think she'll become more like Merrin, so she'll study the dark side of the Force. She'll become a Night Sister, or probably something like that. And that'll be very interesting to see. But anyway... it seemed like, from what little we saw, Bo's daughter seemed to look up to Merrin, so perhaps Merrin will create her own, like, group of Night Sisters. But just as Cal isn't really following Jedi traditions, Merrin's not going to necessarily follow Night Sister traditions either. So that'll be interesting to see. Now, in the meantime, let's see, we brought Partwell, we brought up Elden Ring, we brought up Sekiro, brought up Trails. I am very much looking forward to the next, like I said, looking forward to that Trails game. Though I keep going back and forth between, do I want to go to Trails to Azure Nets, so basically like the second half of the Crossbow arc, or do I want to start the Liberal arc with Trails in the Sky? That's something we're going to have to figure out, chat. But either way, I'd be very interested to challenge run either of them. Now, let's see. If any other things I'm noticing just in general, the weather is getting, seems to be mellowing out a bit. It's been weird the past couple of weeks. Like, the past couple of weeks has been super warm, but now it feels like it's mellowing now. It's almost like it was summer briefly, now it's finally feeling like spring, even though it's towards the middle of May. But at least the sun was shining and it was a beautiful day. Oh, also, speaking of, I mentioned beautiful days. Alright, Copper Nicholson says, how would I handle, like, the various types of ponies in a My Little Pony From Software game? So if we say Unicorn, Pegasus, and Earth Pony. So, The thing about From Software games is classes generally don't matter that much unless you're doing a challenge run. So I think, in all honesty, like, if you were to have the Unicorn, the Pegasus, and the Earth Ponies, they'd probably have to represent different types of playstyles. So probably the Earth Pony would be like your Knight/Barbarian kind of class. The Unicorn would probably be more like your Ranger kind of class, using like a bow or something. And the Pegasus, ooh, this is very pretty. Look at all the look at all the golden leaves. And the Pegasus would probably have to be like your casters or faith builds. But notably, I would not give Pegasuses the ability to fly or unicorns like any unique magic powers at the start, because again, the classes in From Software games aren't really meant to matter that much unless you're doing a challenge run. It's more so just to give you a feel of different flavors of play styles before you just go explore the game, discover stuff, and build your character as you see fit. And that is one of the things I like about From Software games, is it doesn't really feel like you're locking yourself into any particular play style with the selection of a character menu, and more so that you actually get to build your character organically and grow them into your own. Like this character right here, for example, chat. You can definitely see I've done my fashion souls here amidst of different of 4 different armor sets that look like they fit together. And this character is a character. The power stance is 2 grave scythes. It also has a bow as a backup, as well as a faith talisman. So they can do a mix of like power stance scythe attacks, archery, and some incantations. That definitely makes for a nice fun blend for when I'm not doing challenge runs. Let's see, there are also alicorns who are amalgamation of those groups. I see. Well, I know in the Souls games you have a variety of different starring classes. Some of them feel very similar to each other. Like, for example, I think functionally speaking in this game, like, we have a Knight class, but there's also another class that also starts with a sword and has some kind of similar feel to it. Just perhaps different clothes to wear. So having like classes that are kind of a hybrid between 2 classes. So perhaps an Alicorn class is kind of the incantation build, whereas the Pegasus is the spell build. But regardless, it's again, it wouldn't really matter in the long run too much. More so just setting up for basic play styles. Now, and all from there. Let's see here. So I was playing as an astrologer, but like a cool astrologer. I mean, astrologers are cool. They get to do all the spell casting stuff. And if you like, you know, magic builds, then go for it. There are so many spells in this game now I think about it. I mean, especially with like how overpowered you can get in Elden Ring. You can literally make builds that'll one-shot most bosses with if you build your spell build properly. So just Terra Magica, drink the flask that gives you 0 FP consumption, and then just with a Matt's int build, use Comet Azure. You can absolutely delete almost anything in this game. Something I've thought about though, chat, with the way From Software handles games is I disagree with the decision to essentially make its From Software seems to tend to dislike bow builds or any kind of build that involves using arrows or bolts. And that's just because you have to constantly buy more arrows in order, and can't just simply resupply them at your bonfires or site of graces. You actually have to go buy more arrows, whereas with spells and incantations, you recover your FP or your spell slots by simply resting at a bonfire, so it makes those more sustainable even though you only have a limited number of them. So one thing I would like to see From Software add as an option is, what if they added like some kind of blessed arrows or blessed quivers or something like that, where you buy like arrows for like an absurdly larger price than the regular arrows, but it makes it so that those arrows will actually regenerate every time you sit at a bonfire, so it gives at least a bit more parity to between bow builds and crossbow builds compared to all the other classes. On top of that, please give us scaling. I mean, my goodness, From Software, why do you have to get rid of any reasonable amount of scaling on the bows in the base game here? Why is it that the only C-scaling bow in this entire game is the Golem Great Bow? Like, all the other bows never break beyond a D-scaling, and we can't, like, change that even with, we can't even customize that, whereas, like, we can customize the scaling on shields, which is like, why? If you feel like shields are supposed to be an accessory, then why can't we get the bows to have an accessory? Let's see here. A boxing glove arrow. I feel like a boxing glove arrow would be a lot less effective than just a general, just a regular arrow, because the regular arrow is effectively accomplishing the same thing. It's dealing physical damage from a distance. Oh. I mean, there already is the ability to throw shields, Copper Nicholson. If you played Dark Souls 1, for example, the, I think it's the butterfly shield has a unique weapon art where you actually create a blue beam of a blue disc of energy by swinging the shield, and that effectively acts kind of like the Captain America sort of shield throw. So, From Software does like to make a lot of creative weapons, and I think that's been fairly cool. Even, like, Dark Souls 3 has some pretty creative ones. I think of, like, there's a certain kind of knife that would allow you to have, like, multiple in hand, kind of like kunai, or, like, almost claws. You have the Sellsword Twin Blades, which if you hold... actually, there's a couple of weapons in the even in Elden Ring, where it's like, they have the unique ability to dual wield simply by two-handing, rather than actually getting a second of the same weapon to power stance. And just a unique moveset, so... I think the weapons that have that ability are obviously the fist weapons. So when you two-hand a fist weapon, so think like the Wolverine claws, you don't actually like hold the Wolverine claw with both hands. You instead just get a second weapon. That's what they call a paired weapon. Let's see. Do I think From Software will still be able to maintain their dark aesthetic in the bright and colorful world of Equestria? Oh, absolutely. I think From Software can maintain the dark aesthetic in almost any setting, even Equestria. So with Equestria, all they'd literally have to do is make it the Endless Night, just like Nightmare Moon would have wanted, and already you're off to a good start there. And then they would make everything feel a bit more dark and decrepit, and, you know, you can make it work. Probably give it more of a Code Vein aesthetic in that sense. You know, anime, hey Souls in a sense, or that's in this case, Pony Souls. Yep. Now, on the flip side, while I disagree with the notion that bows shouldn't be able to regenerate, at least at some of their arrows back when you rest up a bonfire or a site of grace. And while I disagree with the fact that we don't really have good scaling here, and I wish they would change that, on the flip side, I think it's cool that despite how narrowly designed the bows are in this game, they do at least offer a little bit of variety, even though one bow is clearly superior to all the others. So that bow is the one that we use in the bow only challenge run. I think it was called the black bow, so it has like this black wooden frame similar to the black bow of Ferris from Dark Souls. And in essence, that bow allows you to have the short bow moveset while still retaining the power of a long bow and range of a long bow. So it's effectively just a better short bow, and the short bow is great because you can fire 2 arrows over the course of a single jump, as well as you can do the roll arrow attack, both of which are really, really crucial to making the most of the bow's capabilities. Like, real talk, chat, anytime I've been like in a boss fight with bows that's using like a regular bow and not just a short bow or the black bow, it feels like I'm fighting with cinder blocks tied to my feet, because you can't really get arrows out as quickly as much, that your DPS is so low. Now with great bows, I can at least understand the trade-off as you're trained that off speed for massive damage, but with like just a regular bow, it almost feels outclassed in a sense. Whereas, and that's kind of odd, because I remember in Dark Souls 1 and 2 and even 3, I would use constantly the Dragon Rider. Well, in Dark Souls 2, and especially I would use the Dragon Rider bow because it does more damage per hit. And the difference in draw strain time was not that much. But I digress. So, honestly, I wonder if they'll add the Dragon Rider bow in the DLC for Elden Ring now that I think about it. I mean, we sort of have something like it, like the horn bow in this game is kind of like it, but it doesn't have nearly the same oomph that the Dragon Rider bow has. So I almost wonder if maybe From Software is holding off on the Dragon Rider bow, maybe have it like be a surprise weapon that could be obtained in the DLC perhaps. That'd be a nice addition to the game in my opinion, because the Dragon Rider bow was kind of like a hybrid between a bow and a great bow. It has damage that's kind of in its own unique category because it deals so much additional magic damage in addition to just its regular high amount of damage. So let's hear. 9 hours of Derek. It would be just From Software Deep Space 9. Perhaps. Not sure From Software to make it work. Let's see, what else is there? I understand why From Software doesn't like... I like the fact that From Software for PvP in this game has actually made it so that some weapon stats and talisman stats are completely different for PvP versus PvE. PvE stand for player versus environment, and PvP stand for player versus player. And that's very important for balancing reasons. Since, for example, like all the talismans that boost damage negation, like you can get some pretty high damage negation in this game and make it so that even the heaviest of boss attacks really don't do very much to you. But if you could do that in PvP, it would make certain fights last forever. So they've understandably nerfed those talismans in the PvP setting. Let's see here. But to also create a sense of confusion, it's like, okay, why do I use this talisman in a PvP setting ever if it's only giving me like a 5% boost or something like that? But yeah. And as the fog rolls in on a nice quiet night in Limgrave, I continue to wonder what the Elden Ring DLC will be like. I know it's been most of our conversation and tonight chat. Something else I'll mention is today happens to be Mother's Day. I had the opportunity to chat with my mom on the phone and wish them well. And I think it's important to celebrate Mother's Day, Father's Day, and other such holidays. So, in the meantime, what else do we have? You know, now I think about, like, how many moms are there in video games? Like, I can only think of a couple off the top of my head. Like, Toriel, for example, from Undertale. What other characters are there? Like, Toriel's the obvious one that comes to mind. I think in the Assassin's Creed games, like, that involve Ezio, he speaks to his mom, I think. Let's see here. Oh, for Mother's Day, I did my mom a phone call and wish them well. Generally speaking, when you live a decent distance away, that's what you can do. That's important to let your family know that you love them and to be supportive of them. Ooh, look at that. I don't think I've seen this effect before, chat. Like, we've seen fog before, but not like where it's like fog, almost like a mist going up into a cloudy day. And I wonder how many different combinations of weather there is in Elden Ring. Does Heartwell need a weather system? No. Would I want to add a weather system to Heartwell? Probably not. But still, games with like day and night cycles and weather can be kind of interesting if there's like a genuine reason for the different weather effects beyond aesthetics. I know in Elden Ring, for example, if it's raining, your fire weapons are a little bit weaker, but your lightning weapons are a little bit stronger. I think this got into the conversation last stream of having like maybe some kind of like fire rain or things like that would have the opposite effects, like maybe something that weaken water. Or not water, weaken magic attachment, increase fire damage or something like that. Let's see here. I was unaware of that fact, Copper Nicholson. Yeah. Oh, now here comes the rain. Alright, chat. Here's a question for you. Of all the types of weather, like sunny, cloudy, foggy, misty, raining, etc., what's your favorite kind of weather and why? For me, I think probably my favorite kind of weather would be just like a partly cloudy day with moderate temperatures and just a bit of sunlight. Something where it's a nice day where you don't really feel like the weather's holding you back in any sense. That's my own thumb. That's something the weather I prefer the most. If I had to choose some kind of precipitation, it would probably be a light snowfall. Not a heavy snowfall that would cause lots of, make it difficult to drive places, but a light snowfall so that at least there's a small blanket of snow on the ground. Winter time can be very pretty. Now, let's see here. As a reminder, chat, this is also how an Ask Me Anything stream. So if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. As long as they adhere to chat rules, I may respond to them. Your favorite weather is time dependent. So you like perfectly clear skies at night and cloudy skies and light rain during the day. Interesting. All right. Definitely would cool things off nicely in the day to make it nice and cool at night. And the smell of rain on soil, well, I guess the smell of soil after a good rain is very soothing as well, in my opinion. It's like a light, airy smell to it. It makes you feel like, man, I just want to go for a nice walk in the woods. Yeah. Think about all the different biomes we have in the lands between. We have snow, we have volcano, we have forest, we have lake, and we have city. And what are other kinds of biomes we'll have in Shadow of the Erdtree? Let's see here. Is it going to... I know we have a bunch of caves, but what if we had like a ravine biome? Now I know that Caleb exists, but like hear me out, chat. Like imagine like almost like a ravine or canyon sort of biome where like you have two large massive walls of stone on either side of you and like many different cave systems and platforms. Like I know there is a ravine in this game. It's on the approach towards the Altus Plateau. There's that ravine where you have to make the choice to either use the Grand Lift of Dectus or go literally climb up the mines to the ravine. But I feel like a much larger ravine where there's a lot more dungeons and places to explore. I think that would be really cool and a really interesting mix-up of what we've seen so far. I also think maybe we could have like an ocean biome. I like to say Antonio, there's ocean everywhere, but no, hear me out, chat. Like imagine like a series of islands or archipelagos for you to run through, like there's water everywhere, sea monsters. That would be pretty interesting. Definitely will mix things up. Kind of like I think it's like Hyde's Tower of Flame in Dark Souls 2. Like I would think it'd be so cool to have a biome like that in an Elden Ring setting. Because Hyde's Tower of Flame is one of the prettiest areas in any Souls game. Let's see here. Well, Copper Nicholson, you want a planet made of metal. Have you ever read the Foundation trilogy, Copper Nicholson? Or actually, no, I think it would be... I'm trying to remember what the prequel trilogy to Foundation was called. I think it was called Forward the Foundation. Because Forward the Foundation takes place, a significant chunk of the book takes place on a city planet called Trantor. And that city planet is almost, it's basically like every square inch of city has been built up, planet has been built up kind of as much as it could with many metal stacks and buildings. to the point that you cannot actually physically see the core of the planet anymore. And if they built it up any further, the core of the planet would become unstable. So it's a series by Isaac Asimov, Copper Nicholson. That Orson Scott Card is the one who wrote Ender's Game, so this is a completely different author. And Form of the Foundation, like I said, takes place on a city planet during the height of the Galactic Empire. It's really, really fascinating social commentary. And the thing is that the Foundation books were all about the power of big data to predict future events. And the irony is, in the modern age, we actually have seen that come to pass in many ways, where like now we have so much data, so much information that there is some amount of predictive power to that. And that was something that was brought up and dissected quite a bit with psychohistory as it was put in the Foundation series, because psychohistory sounds like a mix between psychology and history, and the idea is to take a massive sample of people to gather information about them, and then use historical context to try and predict the future of a historical event. And generally speaking, the greater the sample size, the more accurate the prediction. That was the premise of it. And in this case, when your sample size is an entire galaxy, you almost essentially become more like a mathematical prophet in that sense. It's really, really interesting. Yeah, the Asimov books just in general, fantastic sci-fi novels, would 100% recommend. I've also been listening to a novel recently called the Red Rising trilogy. So I finished listening to Red Rising, and I've started listening to Golden Sun, which is the second book in the Red Rising trilogy. It is, once again, a dystopian sci-fi novel, since I tend to like those kinds of books. But I think what makes what's really gotten my attention with Red Rising is if I say The Hunger Games is a dystopian novel about how a regime falls apart from external forces, and if the Princess Trials is a dystopian novel series that's about how a dystopian regime falls apart from within by trying to make changes within the system, then I would say the Red Rising series seems to be more about what does it mean to rule, what does it mean to be a ruler, because the dystopian game that they play in Red Rising is it's almost mythic in its portrayal. It's really, really, really interesting. I don't want to say much because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it. But if you're looking for a dystopian sci-fi novel that has a really good story, really interesting world building, and a lot of references to Greek and Roman mythology, then I would definitely recommend Red Rising. Let's see here. Ooh. I smell some food off in the distance. It smells very good. Just recently I actually had the chance to eat seaweed chips. They're actually pretty good. I'm not sure if you've ever had seaweed chips, chat, but basically it's they taste like a mixture between salt chips and the kind of a salty, airy taste you get when you're eating a fish. So, I see you like seaweed. I see you like seaweed as well. Yeah, it's fascinating how like seaweed is edible, isn't it? Like, you would think there might be some challenges with that, but no, it's got some carbohydrates. Let's see. So, yep, like I said, I was recommending Red Rising as a book. Also, if you like dystopian novels and you like The Hunger Games, The Princess Trials is also pretty well done. Granted, The Princess Trials is definitely written by... I don't remember when how much experience the author had who made The Hunger Games had before they wrote The Hunger Games. But it definitely feels like the author that wrote the Princess Trials is a newer author, but I still liked their portrayal of propaganda and how dangerous information can be, like how the pen is mightier than the sword, so to speak. So, let's see here. I think you are confusing that, Copper Nicholson. The Princess Trials I'm referring to is a book series, not any kind of TV series. So it's a trilogy, very similar to the Hunger Games in that respect. Although I think the author started a new trilogy called, I think, like the Princess Strike series or something like that. It follows the story of a different character that's brought up in the third book of the Princess Trials. In parallel to what they experienced, in parallel to the story that happened in the Princess Trials. So in other words, you get your sort of Ender's Shadow situation, except this is not someone who is necessarily an ally of the main character, Ziamace Talico, in the Princess Trials. So definitely a very different perspective. You are thinking of The Princess Bride, Copper Nicholson, which is a really, really funny movie. If you haven't seen Princess Bride, definitely go watch it. Like, so many funny, memeable moments from that movie. It's like, my name is Anito Montoya de la Rosa. There's all that. And speaking of shows, chat, my girlfriend and I recently finished watching The Ghost of Molly McGee, so the end of season 2 definitely felt like the end of the show. And we had a lot of fun with it. I felt like the end of the show was... It was definitely bittersweet, but also was really satisfying thematically. It definitely fit with the themes about the show, about trying to live your best life and all that. So, has it been different for season 3? Because I don't really think that would make a whole lot of sense given where season 2 ended. But season 2 definitely felt like a proper ending for the Ghost of Molly McGee. And it was definitely interesting to see how that played out. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the finale to Gravity Falls, so definitely they handle it in a much less... Gravity Falls, had almost apocalyptic kind of shenanigans happening, whereas Ghost of Molly McGee, not necessarily. But that's because they're different styles of show. Yeah, so basically, if you like the shows like The Owl House and Amphibia and Gravity Falls, obviously those are probably the 3 best animated Disney shows that I know. But I still think The Ghost of Molly McGee was quite good. Alright. So let's see what else is going on. I also find myself, I frequently go to the gym chat. Today was Biceps and Triceps Day. But something I've noticed myself doing recently is, well, I've mentioned before that I like to listen to audiobooks when I'm at the gym. Though sometimes I'll sit down in between workouts, in between lifting weights to type something into my phone. So different bits of lore for Hartwell or various stuff for Dungeons and Dragons. I find it's a good way to make the most of my time at the gym. Let's see here. One thing I do wonder, what will be the next Owl House / Amphibia / Gravity Falls level of quality of show from Disney? Since at least right now, I don't think there's a show that really matches that. The Ghost of Molly McGee came kind of close, but I think just because for the simple reason that the stakes of the overall show were much lower compared to the other 3 shows I just mentioned. It doesn't really quite reach those same level of heights in terms of the narrative weight. It was still a very good show. I'm just saying, like, it wasn't quite at the same level as those. Gravity Falls Finale has no ending. But, like, think about it. Like, that's all... They all occur in the same universe. So, I would think... So, I'll be curious to see if any shows from Disney in the future kind of follow a similar pattern of quality, where, like, they start slow and then build up to something being truly grand. I think if it was going to happen, it would probably have to be from some alumni from one of the shows I just mentioned, just as the Owl House and Amphibia came from alumni of the Gravity Falls show. I feel like it would have to come from, like, alumni from one of those shows to have that same level of quality. Also, looking forward to second season of Andor whenever that comes out, because because that's, you know, easily one of the best Star Wars shows to ever be made. It's so refreshing to have a Star Wars show that focuses essentially on non-Force users, just ordinary people. Yeah, Andor. It focuses on Cassian Andor from Rogue One, and it's very well done. I would highly recommend it if you have Disney Plus. If you haven't seen Rogue One, I'd also recommend that. It's quite a good movie. Definitely a nice in-between movie between episodes 3 and 4. Yeah. Now some birds flying off in the distance. I do wonder. So, like, you see those birds off in the distance there, chat? Are they actual birds that can be, like, hit with an arrow? Because there are birds like that in this game, or is it just a visual effect? That would be a question for anyone who has some kind of ability to V-clip in Elden Ring. But it is a detail I'd be curious about. Because a lot of different things happen here. I wonder if some of it is filters or if it's actually like an environmental thing. So for anyone who knows, I've heard that Solo was just kind of okay. But I've really enjoyed Rogue One, though. Anyway, so, speaking of, like, a video game visual effects, I remember in Counter-Strike, it was one of the big upgrades that Counter-Strike 2 brought over Counter-Strike Global Offensive was the idea of volumetric smoke. So, first, a little bit of background. Counter-Strike is a game where where two teams face off against each other on a map, and their goal is to try to either activate or disable a site while the other team tries to stop them. And the smoke grenade is one of the most valuable tools in the Counter-Strike games because it gives you the opportunity to essentially block off visibility from a lane or specific area to give your team time to get to a specific objective or get past a certain choke point. And in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, if I'm not mistaken, the smoke grenade was based off of a number of PNG images or things like that. It was a visual effect where there were ways to exploit it. Like if you stood at it at a certain angle, you could see someone who wouldn't be able to see you just because of the way that the different images of the smoke would be portrayed. Whereas in Counter-Strike 2, they changed it from like that kind of an image-based thing to more so of like a volumetric effect. Kind of like if you were to put like a bunch of bubbles almost in the air. Or I guess more so similar to like the various gels that are used in Portal, but if they were actually floating in the air rather than splashing like a liquid. You might say, okay, Anton, what's the big deal with that? Well, first, with the volumetric smoke, you can't have any of that exploits where you have a one-way sight line. But more importantly, it allows you to do stuff where, like, if you fire a bullet through the volumetric smoke, it actually creates, like, a little tiny hole through the smoke where the trail the bullet went. So you can, in essence, make your own sight line. That's really, really interesting. It creates a lot of counterplay. Let's see here. Was Salem really inspired by Abeloth? If that's the case, I did not know that. Like, I know who Abeloth is. Like, I've watched some Star Wars lore videos and how Abeloth, the Formless Mother, is is a truly terrifying part of the Star Wars Legends lore. So, in a Counter-Strike game, Copper Nettleson, the reason why you would shoot bullets through smoke in Counter-Strike 2 anyway is to create a sight line if smoke is blocking your view. And that could actually, again, give you an opportunity to perhaps attack a opponent that you wouldn't otherwise see used in the old smoke grenade system. But anyway, let's see here. Perhaps there's some inspiration there, Copper Nicholson. It's interesting to see where different ideas come from. Though, what I know from the Rubyverse is a lot of the stuff they come up with is based on fairy tales. Not all of it. Like, I think of, like, Neon, for example, is based off of Neon Cat, which is definitely not a fairy tale. But then you have Ruby Rose herself is based off Red Riding Hood. Nora Valkyrie is based off of Thor, and so on and so forth. Let's see here. In a single Star Wars movie. Well, I feel the same way about the fact that they don't really explore the the in-between between light and darkness in any movie except the last Star Wars movie except The Last Jedi, because that's something that's brought up a lot more in like the Knights of the Old Republic games. And speaking of Knights of the Old Republic, I really hope that they do the Knights of the Old Republic 1 remake justice, because Knights of the Old Republic 1 is such a classic game and had such a massive role to play in shaping the lore of Star Wars that I think it would be shameful if they don't do nothing short of like a phenomenal job with it. But I digress. That's a conversation for a different day. And similar to how like Ruby has like different ideas based off of fairy tale characters, in the Persona series, characters are based off of characters are typically based off like mythological characters, religious figures, things like that. So perhaps they might be based off of Greek gods and goddesses, or various monsters from Greek mythology. It's not all Greek. They intermix other mythologies as well, but that seems to be what they go with for Persona. When will Persona 6 be released? I have no idea. But Persona really is a series that's nailed its sense of style, and that's made it quite marketable. Whereas, you know, as much as I love the Trails games, it's undeniable that it's definitely a game that's made on a budget. So visuals are not as good as games like Persona's, even if I think the lore writing and world building is superior. So definitely one of those situations where not to judge a book by its cover. But we'll go for there. Alright. So we see the clouds, we see the leaves are falling. I almost wonder... Chat, do you ever think they'll make a sequel to Elden Ring? And if they did, what would the premise be? You know, it's From Software, you know, after the Dark Souls trilogy, they haven't really made, like, well, I guess that's not true, they had Armored Core 6. They could always make a Dark Souls 4, but I feel like that wouldn't really go over so well because of how Elden Ring has kind of set up its own new systems. So maybe an Elden Ring 2 would be about, perhaps it'd be set on another planet even. Since the Lands Between definitely has references to Eldritch horrors from space. That makes me think, like, how wild would it be if there was, like, we had, like, a fantasy setting, but instead of being on this planet, we were actually on a different planet. Our characters feel like aliens and stuff, but we're still using medieval tools. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to consider there. Alright. Ooh. I don't think I've seen that fast before, chat. Look at the sky. It's down in have a multi-color effect there. So like green towards the front, orange towards the back. Very, very, very picturesque. Yeah. I'm also looking forward to the summer when I eventually get to go to the beach. It'll be a lot of fun. Get to see the ocean. Get to eat lots of good food. Get to spend time with family and friends. Definitely something I'll be looking forward to. And I'm also making some good progress on... good progress on that video essay I brought before. I still have to get the raw footage to edit ready before editing everything together, but I'm hoping to at least have most of the raw footage together by the end of this weekend, because then I'll be able to hopefully work through editing things on an accelerated timetable to hopefully get that video essay out. It's definitely not be a bit different from the video essays I made before, just like I mentioned before. It's not about a challenge run, but I still think it'll have a good message and something to say. And it's been fun to make too. Definitely something I was very passionate about. So, let's see, what else is there? Well, I think that's all I had for today's chat, so I think I'll be able to wrap things up. If you're watching on Twitch, feel free to stick around for Raid, but if you're watching on YouTube and you saw, please consider subscribing on YouTube. If you're subscribing on YouTube, always change your mind later, and it's a great way to support. If you're watching on YouTube, have an amazing night.